last arrive at the point proposed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are officially on the last film of the 2021 gauntlet. Now, there is a bonus feature that I might go see. It's going to depend on the weather and the time and all of that, but for all intents and purposes, this was the last film on my list to see, and therefore the last film of 2021 before I start to compile my best, worst, and meh lists. And the question is, how is this last movie? And I must admit, leaving the theater, it was not worth the effort I had to put in to see this. I had to put in a lot of effort to see this. I mean, not a huge amount. I had made plans to see it a couple times, and for one reason or another, couldn't make the show. And I thought it had gone out of the theaters, and then I saw it was at a theater not too far from my apartment, and it was like, all right, we can do this, and I probably shouldn't have taken the time. Oh, I feel terrible saying that. And it is not like this is the worst movie ever made, or this is some kind of abomination. It's a classy film and a beautiful film by one of the greatest filmmakers currently working. But in the end, I find it lacking. I find it severely lacking. So a couple things drew me to seeing this film. One of them, of course, is it's directed by one of my favorite directors, Guillermo del Toro, of Pan's Labyrinth, the Hellboy movies, The Shape of Water. You know, just a brilliant filmmaker, a visual storyteller who is second to none, who is, part Alfred Hitchcock, part Jim Henson, and I can think of no higher praise. So I really wanted to see what he had to offer. The other thing that was really intriguing is I think the marketing for this movie was incredibly brilliant, in that it didn't tell you a thing about what this movie was about. It was a lot of disjointed images and some clever narration, but it gave you no hint as to what the story actually was or what was going on. Really, and I am very curious to know how much of a hand Guillermo del Toro had in the advertising, because it feels like the advertising is a big part of the lure of the film. As the film deals not exclusively, but deals primarily with the idea of carnival workers, barkers, people trying to get you into the big tent to sell you the next bill of goods. And I can't help but wonder if that was not part of the advertising philosophy of this movie, is don't tell them what's in there, give them enough that their own imaginations kind of take over and gets them into the tent. I would not put it past him to have done that. So now that I have seen the film, I can tell you, and I don't feel bad about giving this information out. So what is this film about? Well, long story short, it is about a low-level con man, grifter, who ends up in a small carnival. This is late 30s, going into the 40s, so tail end of the Depression. Carnivals were big business. Traveling carnivals were big entertainment, kind of a hideaway for, thieves and outcasts and, again, low-level performers and con men and whatnot. And at this carnival, he learns the tricks of the trade. He learns how to be a mentalist, a person who supposedly reads minds and does all this. He learns all of these tricks. He eventually convinces the young ingenue of the carnival to run away with him. They do. and he takes his act much bigger, starts, playing in, larger cities, and he starts getting more and more carried away with his abilities and believing himself untouchable. He keeps going for bigger and bigger cons, and eventually, as it must with a story like this, his ambition and his lack of a moral code eventually bring him down. So there it is. That's the crux of it. Not a new story by any stretch of the imagination, but as is often the case, it's not a question of is the story original, it's what you do with it and how you tell it. In the hands of a filmmaker like Del Toro, a story like this takes on his trademark style of what I call grotesque beauty. That's how I've always described Guillermo del Toro's directing. It's grotesquely beautiful. And that he finds beauty in the ugliness of life and what we would normally consider ugly things. I mean, that's exactly what, Shape of Water is all about. You go look at the Hellboy movies, and even though, yes, they're ugly, they're gorgeous movies. And this movie is no exception. This is a very different film than anything I've ever seen him do before. This is not a typical monster movie. The monster is, of course, the human being, the monster inside. And, when there's a line in the film about you don't know the line until you've crossed it. And that's what this film is very much about, is where do you cross that line? The circus people do what they do, and they do it as a trick. They do it as entertainment. They don't see it as a con game. They see it as, again, a magic trick. They're not trying to hurt anybody. They're just trying to make a living, and they give people a good show, and they go on, and they have their own moral code about what is permitted and what is not. The thing that they always say, you don't do a spook show. You don't, tell people you can talk to ghosts, or, give them, offer them closure for money or that kind of thing. They have a very strict moral code that this character really spits all over and abuses, and he's doing it from almost the very beginning. It's not surprising to me that a story like this, in a setting like this, would really appeal to Del Toro and his sensibilities. Because again, a sideshow, a traveling circus, carnival around this time period, this would be the kind of thing he would love. There are scenes in the carnival of like all these acts and these, this guy doing this tap dance, which just at first seems like this, very nice tap dance, until you see that he's contorting his body all over. So there it is, the grotesquely beautiful. So I can see why he chose this setting for this film. There are a couple things about Del Toro's style that I really like. One of which is his attention to detail. His films are masterfully crafted. Every inch of them is, meticulously planned out. It's no wonder to me they had originally planned him to do the Hobbit movies, because he and Peter Jackson both have that eye for detail. To this day, I'm sad he didn't direct The Hobbit, because I would really have loved to see his version of The Hobbit. But anyway, and what's also interesting about it, it's meticulously detailed, but he doesn't linger on the details. They are there to give the world texture and flavor and a sense of being lived in, but he doesn't make the camera stop on any one detail. They are there to kind of, if you catch them, you catch them, and if you don't, you don't. And in this film, I think more so than a lot of the other films I've seen him do, he really takes that attention to detail into the acting. And I have to say, I did this for Jamie Foxx when I saw Just Mercy, and I feel like I should do it for Bradley Cooper here, but I needed to get on the road, and I didn't want to stop and buy any more candy. I've been eating junk a lot, still kind of coming off the end of the holidays. But I kind of have to eat my words with Bradley Cooper on this one. Because this is a great performance by Bradley Cooper. He does an amazing job. And it is a combination of an actor and a director knowing the actor's strengths. One of the things I've always said about Bradley Cooper, and I remember thinking this watching the movie, is that Bradley Cooper is very nondescript. I could not tell you who Bradley Cooper is if you lined him up with all these other Hollywood pretty boys. I kind of know who Channing Tatum is now, and Ryan Gosling, but if you lined all three of them up a year or two ago, I couldn't tell you who was who. And Bradley Cooper is still in that section for me. I don't know Bradley Cooper from Adam, and I've seen several movies he's in. And the thing is that for this role, this is exactly what you need. This character is a chameleon, and he changes depending on who he's interacting with. He alters himself to get the information or get the training or get whatever it is he needs. One of the first things I noticed, and I was very proud of myself for noticing this, is that the first several scenes that we see our main character in, he's not talking. Everybody talks to him, but he is not talking. And then a short time later, when he's meeting with a fortune teller who's going to try to teach him some of the tricks of the trade, she says that you alter your way of speaking depending on your audience. If you're in the South, you speak like a Southerner. If you're in the West, you speak like a Westerner, to get the people to trust you. And throughout the early stages of this movie, every person, when he does finally talk, every person he talks to, he talks differently to. When he's talking to her, it's a much, it's a very kind of gravelly kind of thing. When he's talking to the young performer that he's seducing, it's this very, aw shucks, we're going to run away and do all this stuff, Thelma May. It's a really brilliant performance by him, and I have to give him all the credit in the world, because I never thought he was much of an actor, but he really put it on. I give him credit for it. Again, the film looks beautiful. It sounds beautiful. It's always great to see Del Toro regulars like Ron Perlman and Runa Moody. I love seeing these people. I love it when a director loves an actor so much they'll put them in anything. And Ron Perlman's just one of those actors I love seeing. He's like that big bear of a dad or uncle or whatever. He's like, oh, Ron Perlman, I love you. All the actors are really pulling some major chops here. They're doing some great work. So then why am I left a bit cold by the movie? Well, a couple of reasons. And the first reason is that the attention to detail I mentioned a second ago, it has a double-edged sword. This film is very meticulous in the telling of its story. It is going to tell you the full rise and fall of this nameless man. Well, he has a name, but, in excruciating detail. And as such, it really begins to drag. I really do believe that this movie could have come in at least 30 minutes shorter with some editing. I understand why you don't want to edit, but I think this film really would have benefited from a little bit of the editing. It just drags on a bit too long, and you don't mind it in the early goings because there's enough interesting visuals to kind of keep you occupied while the story is unfolding. There are all these other colorful characters to really help sell it. Del Toro's camera is always in a very gentle movement. It's like a symphony the way he directs and the way he moves the camera. It's very, very poignant and always very calming, even in the most horrible of scenes. But it's a little, when they get away from the carnival and we're showing him now in higher society, the film slows to a crawl. And we lose a lot of the energy that was helping to keep us invested while the earlier parts of it were being set up. So that is a big thing. I also have to say that one of the other things that really pulls me down about this movie, and I don't know if this is fair to hold against it, And once again, we come back to the marketing. The marketing was very tight-lipped about what the story was, what was going to happen. But one thing that kept going was, oh, the ending is going to shock you. The ending is so profound. The end, the greatest ending to a film in decades. And I hear that, and I go in, and it's a movie about con artists. So I'm in there going, okay. So I'm paying attention to every detail, everything they do, everything they say, and because obviously someone's, players are getting played, and we're going to learn all of this stuff and this big reveal. I want to see, so you're paying all this attention, and the ending is so bloody predictable. It is so scathingly predictable. I saw what was coming about an hour before it happened. I'm not going to spoil it in case you want to go see this yourself. But in a way, I feel like it doesn't matter. There's nothing really to spoil. There really isn't. It's very surface level, and I was very disappointed by that. I wanted more. I was really waiting, for all of these loose ends and all of these old cons, and I was waiting to find out that all the people in the circus had conspired to fuck him over for revenge for the things he did. I was waiting to see that the young ingenue he lured away was really playing him the whole time. I was waiting for all these sins to come back, or, I didn't think this was necessarily going to happen, but, there is a huge, one of the thematic things in here is, the devil and hell and the devil and all of us. I was waiting for Cate Blanchett's character to go, oh, I'm really the devil. That was a bit far-fetched, but with Del Toro, I wouldn't have been surprised. And the ending was just it's like, oh, okay, well, all right, that's how you want to end your movie. Okay, great. So, the marketing did its job in getting me into the theater, but it did a little too good of a job selling the ending, which did not live up to the hype. So yeah. I should mention also brilliant performances by Willem Dafoe. It's funny, Becca was mentioning how she hasn't seen Willem Dafoe and things. We've seen him in like 3 movies this year, or heard of him in at least 3, so he's bouncing back. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this movie. It's brilliantly directed. One of the other elements of Del Toro's directing style is he has this penchant for making modern day fairy tales. And this one, while not being a fairy tale, it is a morality play. So he makes fairy tales and morality plays for adults. And you can tell he loves the stories he tells. You really can. But there's I think he loves this one a little too much. I think we could have knocked this out in much less time. I don't know what else to say about this one, so I'm just going to wrap it up. And I may be stalling because I have to get to that final grade and determine what it is I want to give this movie. And I'm not sure. And I think I'm going to end this in a very disappointing note. And I'm sorry to do this, but my final grade for Nightmare Alley, I'm going a C+. Oh, I've been handing out C's lately. Oh my goodness, so many C's. Oh my God. And I'm sorry about it. I really am, because I love Del Toro and I think there's a lot of good in this movie. But when it gets right down to it and I ask myself, would I ever actually watch this again? Unless it was to watch it with somebody who'd never seen it. Would I ever, on my own, want to see this movie again? And I have to answer, not really. I really don't. So, sorry, Del Toro. Into every life, a little rain, and in some cases, as it seems, a little snow must fall. So, we officially end the 2021 Gauntlet with a C+. Sorry, but there it is. Okay. So that is it. As I've said, there Might be one last 2021 film that sneaks in here if I have some time, but I'm not going to knock myself out. So what that means is now we have officially, asterisk, seen all the films of the last year that I want to see, which means it's time to compile my list. So those are going to be coming soon, as well as reviews for the next round of movies. You know, we're in a new year. There are new films. Oh, there are also 2 reviews from this year that are still on the way. They've been recorded, but we had some technical difficulties. We're trying to retrieve them, but they're there. They will be up. So even though they're not posted yet, they are part of the gauntlet. We saw them. We reviewed them. We just haven't gotten the videos up. So anyway, thank you for joining me on the 2021 Gauntlet. Looking forward to the new year, seeing what lies ahead, seeing what films come out, and sharing it all with you and the film crew and my lovely girlfriend Becca and everyone else. So thank you all. So I am going to say Happy New Year, and as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.